Greetings, ladies and melogents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Yet Another Alien Abduction, written by daeomec. Jen was an attractive specimen for alien abduction, and she was damn tired of it. The first few times, government men in suits had come with their stern warnings, telling her not to speak of it to anyone or else. After the fourth time she'd been picked up in the middle of the night and dropped in a cornfield, they'd given her the phone number for the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs. Its shared acronym with the Drug Enforcement Agency was not a coincidence. Several abductions later, Jen was on first-name basis with everyone in that department. She sighed and looked around, and the neon blue colors pointed towards the AETHERs, which made things easier. Out of all the extraterrestrial life, the Theesvans were largely agreed to be among the most tasteless, arrogant, and stupid. Jen tugged at the metal restraints on her elbow and smirked. They were loose enough to slip right out of. When she freed her hands from the restraints, she unlocked the cuffs on her feet. Yes, they thought humans were too stupid to figure out a simple latch. A yellow light began to flash, and Jen assumed that there was an accompanying screech too high for her to hear, as was usually the case with the Theesvans. Unfortunately, she'd learned that the hard way. Despite the stiffness from being in one position for so long, Jen hopped down from the table and shook out the cramps in her arms. Then she walked over to the computer interface on the wall and took off her necklace. Her abductors had let her keep her clothes and jewelry, too. They were truly idiots. Especially since her necklace was actually an alien tech version of a USB drive. She plugged the drive into the mainframe. Raj at the DEA had made a virus that could deactivate the alarm system, copy most of the files stored on the ship, and transmit it back to the headquarters. Well, it wasn't just Raj who'd made it. The rogue AI she'd rescued from a few abductions back had added the finishing touches. The virus also translated Theesvan's language into English, though she could read a smattering of the galactic lingua franca, which sounded a little like the bastard child of Russian and trumpets. The Theesvans considered themselves above non-Theesvanian, anything. Now that she could read the screen, Jen scanned the blueprints of the ship for an escape route, and, that was new. There were other humans on the ship. Since the Theesvans were rather incapable of multitasking, they usually abducted one human at a time. Jen couldn't leave her fellow Earthlings on the ship. She closed the screen and ducked into the hallway, making her way to the next room. "Hello," she said cheerfully. Surprisingly, the other three humans were all in one place and unrestrained. "I'm Jen. Nice to meet you." Huddled together in the corner were a pale teenager who looked like the epitome of wannabe goth, a handsome black man in a suit, and a middle-aged blonde tourist, if the Mickey Mouse hat was any indication, which it was. Each one was varying levels of shock. The goth girl stared at her feet, bored, while the well-dressed man was blinking rapidly at the wall. The tourist, on the other hand, was gawking at Jen with undisguised horror. She cleared her throat. "I'm Jen," she repeated. "And you are?" "Call me Ebony Doctus," said the teen. After giving Ebony the side-eye, the younger man introduced himself. "David." "Dave," mumbled the other man, speaking in a heavy German accent. "Yeah, I am Niklas." "Are you an alien?" Ebony picked at her studded black t-shirt, which proudly proclaimed, "Haters make me famous." "Nope, I'm here to rescue you." Jen rubbed her hands together. She hadn't done this with other people in a while, and it felt great to break up the routine. "Have any of you all been abducted before?" Ebony Darkness raised her hand. So her apathy was more than just general teenage hatred of the world then. David looked from the teen back to Jen. "Is this normal?" "It cannot be," and Nicholas's horror hadn't decreased in the slightest. "Well, yeah," said Jean. "Florida's a hotspot for abductions. Why do you think so many crazy things happen there?" "Because of the misconception caused by meteor and the greater access to arrest records, a large amount of tourists and retirees, and, a liberal drug rehabilitation policy," David said, raising an immaculate eyebrow. "No, aliens. Now, come on. If we're going to take over the ship, we better get a move on." She hurried out the door, and the trio followed her in a single line. Mijn man had recht. Ik had nach Spinien gegaan sollen. Nicholas had taken off his Mickey Mouse hat and was currently talking to it. Heilig Sieber. Waarom habe ich America gebracht? Quiet. The virus should keep us off the cameras, but we can never be too careful. David made a sound of understanding. So that's how you got the door open. I said quiet. They continued down the twisting hallway in silence. The S-Vins build round saucer-like ships, so each hallway led to a central command, like spokes on a wheel. As they proceeded further, the blue walls became brighter with more elaborate patterns. Are you sure that this is the way to escape? David asked, stopping. It seems to be we're going the wrong direction. Dude, I did say to be quiet. Jen gave him an exasperated look, but he simply stared back with an unamused frown. The other two had also stopped to look around with amusement. Besides, she said, relenting, didn't you hear what I said? We're first going to take over the ship. What? David once again forgot about the need to be quiet. I thought you were joking. Look, shouldn't we go to the escape pods or something? No, that's a bad idea. The escape pods on Thespian ships don't have navigation systems. They just go to the closest non-hostile ship or planet. We don't know where we are. Sure, we're probably in a high Earth orbit, but what if we're not? Where could we land then? That seemed to satisfy him, and he gave a slow nod. Of course, that was when their luck ran out, and a thin, long-limbed Theisvin strolled into the hallway and squeaked. Oh shit! Jen broke into a sprint and barreled towards the alien. You can't let him sound the... Nicholas leapt forward and punched the Thespian in the face. With a low key, it crumpled to the floor. What? Asked Nicholas, while the other gaped at him. Did I do it wrong? Jen glanced him on the shoulders as she crouched by the alien. No, you did great. Ebony, darkness. She gestured for her to come closer. Give me a hand, will you? The teen rolled her eyes and scoffed. Fine. Ebony grabbed 3 legs protruding from its round torso, while Jen held the lumpy shoulders. Let's move him to the side, all right? Careful, these ones tend to be delicate. They placed him on the side of the widening hallway. Jen stepped back and frowned at the insignia on its feathered shirt. Instead of the 3 interlocked septicons that she usually saw on Thespians, she was 2 squares in a spiral. That's weird. She shook her head. Jen took the plasma stick from her unconscious Thespian's holster. One of these had given her a scar on her left shoulder. Jen knew there were ways to adjust the power settings, but hell, if she knew them. After a moment of deliberation, she handed it to Nicholas. Here, point the blue end towards your target and push the green button in the middle, and it'll shoot a jolt of energy. It's not lethal, I think. Nicholas had turned oddly pale, but he took the stick and nodded. Anyway, let's get going. The virus is good at blocking us from the camera, but I don't think it's good enough to hide that. They hurried down the hallway until they came to a large door. Ebony darted to approach it, but David grabbed her arm and held it back. Wait, we need a plan, he glanced at Jen. What should we do? Oh, the usual, she gave him a smile. By now the virus should have infected the entire mainframe. Once we go inside, it'll keep the tech from working. We'll threaten to keep it that way until they promise to take us home. Then the virus will turn everything back on and pilot the ship back. I don't think viruses work like that. If the virus can do that, then why are we threatening the aliens? David asked, looking about ready to run to the other direction. It's easier if they cooperate. Now, are you ready? Yeah! Nicholas's voice was shaky, but he held the plasma stick out in front of him with determination. Ebony rolled her eyes and nodded. This is ill-conceived and hasty, said David with a sigh. I'll take that as a yes. We'll do it on the count of 3. She glanced up and nodded at the camera facing them. 1, 2, 3. The humans burst through the door. Freeze! Jen shouted. Don't move, and no one gets hurt. The dozen Thesvins jumped back in shock, panicking even more when their computers didn't respond, instead displaying a translation of Jen's demand in their written script. A few banged their 3 heads against the screen, while others cowered in shock. Especially when Nicholas began waving around the pilfered weapon. The most colorful Thesvin was screeching something that frequently went out of human hearing range. Thankfully, the virus was helpful enough to provide a word-for-word translation on the large main screen. You stupid untranslatable profanity. Untranslatable profanity. Untranslatable profanity. You took humans from the planet, multiple humans, including the troublesome one, and you didn't put them back. A paler blue Thespian responded almost entirely in a pitch they couldn't hear. We forgot, sir. Please, please. Lengthy plea for mercy with metaphors. The head Thespian didn't seem to be in the mood for mercy. Do you know what this interrupted? Do you know? I will cut your untranslatable profanity legs and sensory organ off. Dull buzzing interrupted them both, and a different alien stood up. Unlike the tripedal, leather-skinned Thespians, this one had a long, furred body and sloping wings. Jen had never seen an alien like it before, and she'd seen dozens of species in a short lifetime. A necklace with the same square and spiral symbol from earlier hung from its neck. It began to speak in the trumpet-like galactic lingua franca. What is this? What are all these creatures? There was a brief silence. Have you been abducting sentients? It was done without my knowledge, Ambassador. I swear It was still done. I'm sure you know our stance towards that. I'll have to make a note of that in my report. The so-called ambassador glanced at the screens displaying the translation. Finally, it turned its one-eyed gaze to the four humans by the doorway and trumpeted in their direction. Hello, I am Ambassador Deseri of the East Milky Way Alliance. Are you the creators of the AI that has been infecting the Thespian ships and some of our own? End of story. I would just like to thank the T5 supporters. Bushmaster 117, Caspar Arnholtz, Strankzoon WRE, Elijah Silvercross, Gray, John Carrington, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.